Hey, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Education, Leadership, and Beyond, Surviving and Thriving, and excited to be on with Dan Spainhour tonight here at the education class at LIU Hudson. We're in Middletown, New York, and this is the leadership class here behind me, and Dan Spainhour on tonight. Dan is an educator for over 30 years down in King, North Carolina, and Dan is also the author and the putting together of this great book here, Leading Narratives. Dan, thanks so much for joining our class this evening.
My pleasure. I appreciate you having me. It's always good. I think we've done this a couple of times. And, always like talking to you.
The first three-time person here on the show.
Oh, I do feel privileged. All right, let's roll.
Yeah. So Dan, we've learned a lot about leadership in this course here. And again, a great group of educators behind me, and I'm going to turn it over to them in a moment. But we've met authors Jay Billy, Culture Matters, and Beth Huff, who wrote Lead Like a Pirate. And then we chose to read your book in this course as well, Leading Narratives. And we talked about the power of storytelling. And in this book that you put together, there's so many amazing stories that we're going to talk about tonight. The first question, I'll kick it off, and then we'll turn it over. You know, telling stories as an educator is a great tool. It's a great way to connect with people. What are some stories in here, Dan, that you think would resonate with schools and teachers and kids? What would be some that jump off the pages here for you?
Well, let me start a little bit about it. It's I start with the book about my experience at Duke basketball camp, and I got to know Coach K when I was about 22, and so I got to start working out down there.
They got beat
in the earlier years. Pardon?
They got beat last night.
So this was in the earlier years, and in those days he wasn't as busy as he is now. So we would always finish each week with a little pizza party, and we'd sit around and talk. And I talk about it at the beginning of the book, but that part he used to talk about how important his stories most of the time back in those days anyway always involved trains. Either the trains leaving the station, get on the station, and he was talking about how much the words and how you relate to your people and your players are the most important thing, even more so than X's and O's and everything else like that. And I'm sitting there as a 22-year-old, and at the time I had no idea he was going to become what he was going to be, but that resonated with me. And I've always been a collector. One of the other books that I did was a collection of quotes that I put together as if it went through a season. So I would collect things and I would put it in a file. It's a whole lot easier now with my files because now I put it on the computer, but I would have these stacks of files. And when I would get a story or something like that, I would put it in a file that I thought would be relevant to my coaching. And so what I've done is I've started putting all these things into a book or into a different file. And that's what this is. That's what this book is about. So there's a lot of stories that's in there that you may have a tough time saying, how could that have anything to do with education or anything else like that? But some of the ones that I really like the one about the lumberjack. And the reason is because I think the lumberjack story, if you've read it, it talks about the guy goes out and he's got a job and he's cutting down trees, and the first week or whatever, he comes back with all these trees and then he's feeling good about it and everything. And then as the weeks go on or the days go on, his output goes down and he starts to feel bad. He's like, I can't understand what's going on. And the guy asks him, well, how many times have you sharpened your axe? And he goes, oh, I haven't sharpened my axe at all. And I think as leaders, sometimes we get that beginning burst and we feel good about what we've done. And so then we're going to do more. And we don't take time to step back, sharpen our tools, rest a little bit. And now our output will start getting a little bit better, which I think that's the whole thing with the lumberjack. So instead of like putting all that into words, you just tell a little story about a guy's going out cutting down a tree. His axe gets dull. He doesn't even think he needs to take some rest, and he's not getting the same output. So I like that one. There's a lot of them. There's some of them in there that's a little edgy, which may not go with education. But I do like I like the one with the maid is talking to the husband, and she's making an accusation about somebody else, and she gets real loud. And I think that's important because sometimes a lot of people get really loud and start throwing darts at people, and they don't realize that sometimes those darts will come back toward them. So I think any type of story, if you're going to relate, and Andrew does it all the time, I know. Well, as soon as I tuned in, he's telling a story about my brother, but that's the way I think you get people to listen. We got so much noise today, and people are hearing stuff all the time, that if you can somehow take what you're wanting to get across and put it into a little brief story, I think people have a tendency to remember it better. So that's what it's about.
Great, Dan, and thank you so much. And I'll open it up to the class now about some of the stories that might have related to them in their lives. So.
My name is Susan DeGeorge, and I just wanted to comment on one of the stories they spoke about was big people do small things. And I think that really touched me as an educator because the soldiers were digging the trench and the leader didn't want to go ahead and help because he felt he was, I guess, too good for that.
Yeah.
He realized it was General George Washington. So it gave him a reality check. And for me, I really, what I took from that was that no job is too big for any educator to do. We're all in this together. We're a team. And whatever the job is, as leaders, we should go ahead and initiate it and carry out whatever task is necessary for the benefit of the students and the team. So I really appreciate that story. So thank you.
That's great. That's fantastic. Yeah, I think that is the meaning of it. And I think sometimes as leaders, if we're not careful, we can get infected with the know-it-all virus, where we sort of think that we know it all and something's beneath us. And I've heard many times of people talking about, and this actually is a Coach K story, and I've put this in one of my other little books and stuff because I was around him so much. But he talks about he was at camp and he comes around and he knocks the manager and he spills a drink, and the manager starts freaking out. And he goes, grabs a towel, and he says, "No, let me get it." And the point is that you make a mess, you clean it up, you do the work that the other people's doing. So, and yeah, that's perfect. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. You guys
I
can
appreciate your tweet today.
What's that, Dan?
I think you tweeted out today. I just retweeted it. I appreciate your tweet today.
Yeah, I actually picked out 4 stories that I really enjoyed. So thank you for looking at that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, Dan, how you doing? Frank Braziano.
Hey, Frank.
I teach third graders. They're 8 years old. And I got a funny story. I'm really enjoying your book. I really, the students can sit here and read it on their own, but I found a good kick out of Answer the Tough Questions, which is kind of off topic to education. But the one that, I actually read a couple of these stories to my students, and the one about the elephants, where the boy is kind of being a smart aleck.
Yeah.
And it said, keep in mind, there may be more than one right answer to any question you ask. We have our state exam tomorrow. And so he says to me, so there's going to be more than one right answer on the test? I'm like, no. There's only one right answer on multiple choice question. So,
hey, but he was listening, right?
Oh, he sure was.
He was listening. That's good. We'll have to put that in my next one. I like that.
Hey, Kate, did you want to go?
I have maybe a more difficult question. I found a lot of the stories to be a little bit offensive.
Yeah.
I mean, you seem like a nice guy, and I looked at your other work and everything. So what do you say to people that find some of the stories sexist or really pushing towards different stereotypes? Yeah,
and I think there's definitely that, and I tried to say that at the beginning. There's some that's I thought about excluding some, but it was my whole collection of it. And so, I mean, I think that the bottom line is that sometimes, that freedom of speech gives us the right to put things in there, and then freedom of thought is whether or not we want to be offended by it and things like that. So I'm not, it may not be for everybody, and it may not be for all educators or anything else like that. What it is it's stories that had come across my career that I had put in my files and things like that. And it could definitely, I can see that. What's funny is it's the difference in terms of things like there was a story in there about the priests and the nuns and stuff like that, which could definitely go. And I had one person who bought it, who I put it in my journal. I always finish my journal with a little story at the end. It talks about same thing. It's a moral, and that's how it's the last word of the story. And I sent samples of the journal, and I had a coach contact me and said that, how, you know, I don't understand why you would put that in there and everything else. And then that same sample issue, 2 other women coaches subscribed with it. So I think it's all how we look at it, but I can definitely see that, and I understand that, and that's why I tried to say that up front and everything. Yeah.
I found your stories quite often thought-provoking, and I mean, I see the summary under most all of them. And I mean, one of my favorites that I've known a long time is the one about the 2 wolves, the tale of the 2 wolves.
Yeah.
And I just find it that, you know, it's the interesting perspectives, you know, and it does leave you thinking, you know. Now,
Yeah.
You told how you came about, you know, you collected these stories with the different, like, I don't know, your takeaway at the bottom of each one. Did you kind of come up with it at the same time? Is that something that just evolved over time? You understand what I mean?
That's something that's evolved over time, or that I've changed, and I even changed some as I put it into the book format. But what I would do is with my folders, I would take it as to what I thought certain things would be, and sometimes it would be more toward coaching. For example, I mean, I don't know if you can see, but behind us the picture of Hold the Rope, and that's a story that's in there. And we put that one with the teamwork and things like that. So I would try to put it with that. But the little part at the end is just as a leader and as a coach, that I thought that story meant to me.
Yeah,
and that's what.
A lot of
Yeah.
that, I agree with you, but it also worked for me to just expand from there. But it, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can be, I think that's what stories are. It can be however you want to choose to use it, and however you don't want to use it. And you know, we all hear certain stories and say, oh, that one's not for me. And that's what this is, just supposed to be a resource for that. Yeah. So that's good. Yeah. You can use it however you take it. Mm-hmm.
And I would like to say that I'm married to a man from Mississippi, and so in my household, there is a lot of storytelling.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Doesn't matter if the story is true, it's just that you liked it or you appreciate
That's
it.
right. Well, good. Yeah. It's that Southern storytelling.
Yes.
Dan, I wanted to jump in. I've used your stories in so many settings. The one about feedback, about the young man that wants to cut the lawns,
Right.
calling for a job. I told the one in here about the cannibals that ate the secretary, right? They ate all the managers, no one noticed. They ate the secretary, and it fell apart.
Yeah.
But one of the ones I've used at school with kids is, you know, with so much today, we see so much about their mental wellness, their confidence, their school anxiety, is the cracked pot. And the use of the
water.
Why don't you tell me your inspiration for that, or where you got that one, and, you know, have you used that maybe in your school?
Oh yeah, and I think where it came from is hard to say. Somebody once told me, like, originality is remembering what you read or saw, but forgetting where you saw it. And so, you know, I can't take credit for it. I don't know where it came from, and I'm sure you could probably Google most of these, and they'll show up in some form or fashion on the internet. So it's probably more of a curation as opposed to authoring it. But yeah, I like that one too, because the pot thinks it's useless, but yet it's serving a major purpose. We use that with our role players. As a matter of fact, that was the file that was under was for I called it my bench players, my bottom, I called it 9 through 12. And that's for my players that didn't get a lot of time. And so we would say, I'd use that story or something there along that, and like, you don't realize it, but you're growing this team, you know, by your effort every day. People don't see it, but at the end, you're gonna, like this year, we were able to win the championship in our league and everything, and they all get the same prize. and they're getting it, and you don't see it. So I like that story too. That would be one of my favorites.
Thanks, Dan. Someone else want to jump in?
Hi, Dan. Alex Vanderbilt. I really enjoyed reading the compilation of all the stories that you put into the book, and I can kind of get the sense of like where you are as a leader and what really motivates you. But could you maybe talk more about, besides the stories that you collect for yourself, what motivates you as a coach, as a teacher?
Yeah. I mean, I think I've always had a passion for it, and I've always said if I ever wake up in the morning and I don't want to go to work, then it is work. There's days, of course, that it's not, that something comes up, but I think as leaders, you're not going to incite enthusiasm in anybody else if you don't have enthusiasm. And I've been fortunate enough to have enthusiasm for my job, and it's taken me some different places, and it's been good. I enjoy reading. I enjoy learning, and I think that as leaders, sort of like the lumberjack story, I think as leaders we have to take care of ourselves, and we have to. It's easy to get in that rut and just keep doing the same thing over and over. And what I've tried to do, especially the longer that I've been in it, is I've tried to refresh myself, and that's what the writing has done. That's what the journal has done, and I've been fortunate enough that some people have latched on and done. And even if I didn't get any subscribers to my journal or like when I put this collection together, I don't put it together necessarily to sell it. I just enjoy doing it. And it's been fortunate enough some people have been excited about it and reading it and things like that. But it's passion, and I think we all have it for something, and I think we know it when it's there. So when I think if you can find that passion, it's easy to get up and it's easy to read things that you want around that and everything else. So I don't. That's what it's been for me, and that's why I keep doing it 36 years later. So.
Anyone else got questions?
Hi, Elisa Bellestrino here. Since it's April Fool's Day, I picked the one A Rough Day, and you wrote how pranks, no matter how seemingly harmless, can backfire. In particular, there is this one prank that my friends did on me back in middle school, and I will never forget it because of how upset it made me feel. The teacher was in on it, which is even worse. And, they gave me a bad grade on something or whatever the case may be. I got a grade back. And then, I went to go talk to the teacher about it, and he was in on it and, wouldn't change my grade or whatever the case may be. And then when I walked out after talking with the teacher, they said it was a prank and, laughing, but I was crying and upset the whole time. So I can understand how pranks, they can maybe be harmless, but they really can backfire.
Yeah,
So,
I agree. And I think as leaders, we have to be careful. We came up the younger days of hazing and everything else like that. And, that's a good evolution that's sort of been taking itself out, because a lot of times the hazing and stuff that would happen within teams, the coaches would be involved in the same type of thing. And it seems funny for 12 guys, but for the 13th guy, the one person that's getting cranked on, it's never very funny. And so, yeah, I can definitely relate to that. And so maybe somebody will use that story for that.
Dan, we have again a great group of educators here. You've been in education your whole life. Some of them are going to go on to administrative jobs. What advice would you give the group here in terms of leadership, in terms of effective principals and effective school leaders? What advice would you give them?
First of all, I think be authentic, and that's, we're in a society now And I thought about this actually, which goes back to that other question about offensive and stuff like this, because we're in a society or a situation now where a lot of people are afraid to make decisions because they're afraid of the way the bashing or the society may react to it. And if now there can be some good to that because people can be more accountable for the decision. But I think if you're making an ethical decision or a decision that feels right in here, you have to be authentic enough to make it. And because I think there's a lot of people in leadership today that are afraid to make decisions, and they'll just be decisionless because they're afraid of some backlash that may come from it. And there's a lot of people that, people are afraid to stand up. As said, some of the greatest revolutions, Hitler's and stuff, comes from apathy because people were afraid to stand up when they knew and things were happening. So I think as leaders, we have to be authentic enough, and we have to stand up for what we believe in. And we also have to understand that those beliefs can be different. The other thing I think is important for, you can't build a sustainable program as a coach. You can't build a sustainable school if you're not sustainable. And in other words, you have to take care of yourself, because the higher you climb up the leadership ladder, the more can be expected of you. And if you're not careful, it becomes 24/7. And then what happens, I think a lot of times you start out trying to do 24/7, and you're wanting to do everything, and you try to do everything. And then before long, burnout happens or decision-making gets affected. And I think you have to really make sure that you take care of yourself. And the other thing I would say is that we're all, as leaders and organized and everything else, we love tasks, to-do list, and things like that. And I think a to-do list obviously is important. You do the first thing in the morning. We've all heard these things. But I think you got to be careful not to get married to a to-do list, because some of life's best things, some of the best things that happen in schools, some of the best things that happen in coaching or anything else like that are the unexpected things. And if you're so busy just doing the to-do list, sometimes you'll miss out on some of the other things that could be there. So, but our profession, education, needs quality people. And, the fact that you're sitting there at 607 and you're expanding, and you're evolving says a whole lot about you. And we can always use quality people. So hats off to you.
Dan, we talked about the power of our interactions, the way we interact with the staff, the things we say to kids, and treating that is very important. You tell the story about Bear Bryant on page 65, that he meets a gentleman in a diner, right?
Yeah.
Signs him an autograph, sends him a picture, and then years later, that gentleman's son would go on to be a star because he was going to Alabama because of that single interaction. Tell me about that story, and again, your interaction with all of these kids over the years and the importance of those interactions.
Yeah, I think it was, and again, sometimes you don't know the source, and so sometimes it's easy to think it's your original stuff, and it's not. But I think it was Steve Jobs or somebody who talked about connecting the dots. You connect the dots. You don't connect the dots until you look back. I think a lot of people are trying to network and connect the dots moving forward. And if you'll just be nice, treat everybody as if they are something special, you'll be amazed at the way the dots connect down the road. The way I first ended up in college basketball was because of somebody that I had talked to, and then ended up talking to the coach at Florida State, who was at Miami at the time. I had no idea, but it's just because somebody I had taken a phone call from. And so I think it's amazing when you look back and you say, oh, but like when Bear Bryant went into that restaurant or whatever and to there, he had no idea there was a potential recruit coming there. He was just being nice to the people that were there. And that's what sort of to the janitor or the custodian's name and stuff like that. A lot of times as leaders, if we're not careful, we think that we've got to only look upward and only try to make the next connection up the ladder. And sometimes it's the connection down the ladder who becomes up the ladder that can really help you out. So the bottom line is be professional and courteous to everyone. And even when someone is disagreeable or somebody you completely disagree with and everything else like that, you can still, and that's something I think that's happening in today, is that anybody that we tend to disagree with, we tend to get louder with, and we tend to attack personally. We don't have to change our minds in terms of agreement, but we do need professionalism, especially in education.
I was just checking with the group, Dan. Anything else from our group here?
I had a quick question. Hi, Dan, it's Veronica Storano.
Hi, Veronica.
Your stories, I was wondering if you had if something inspired you to put all the stories together, like what was your motivation behind putting the book together?
My motivation was I always wanted to be the best coach I could be, and it really was based on that pizza night at with Coach K and them, and him talking about how you need to get different stories, and that's how kids will listen, especially in timeout. Sometimes you'll just say something as opposed to what you need to do. So I started just collecting them and everything, and I do use them in the gym. Maybe not along, but I'll reference something from time to time and like once you've got a little story base or you've got something, and then you get into a heated situation such as a timeout or something like that, I can just reference a little something and their mind will go right to what we're trying to get, like hold the rope, tell each other he's got your back and stuff that's there. So my motivation was always I wanted to try to be the best I could at the coaching, and I thought this would help me. And then I got into it, and I really got into the leadership part of it, and that's what's inspired me to put this stuff together.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing them with us.
Thank you.
Dan, we have a question here, a basketball question from my friend Tom Ricard. So you're going to have to go back and answer that because we're talking leadership now, not hoops. But our good friend Tom Ricard asked, Dan, where can people find this book? I know the Leadership Pub, the Leadership Publishing Team is your group. Where can they find this book?
Anywhere books are sold, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any of those places. And then Leadership Publishing Team is our website. That's the leadership website. So. And
then also you referenced the journal. Again, here it is. We love it's thick. It's not a flimsy piece of paper. You mail it right to us. Where can people find the journal?
LeadershipPublishingTeam.com. Yeah, that's been a really fun project. And we need to do some one-on-one interviews on that because that one's been really good. Matter of fact, we're just talking with a high-profile guy that we're trying to get on board with that. So that's exciting to see where that's going, And I think that's what's, I keep talking about, but that's what I think is important in any type of leadership or education. Keep evolving, And it's amazing. 10 years ago, I had no idea I'd be writing a journal that the high-profile leaders and coaches are reading. Who knew? So you just keep evolving and keep doing what's fun.
And I know you're offering a discount to the ELB listeners. ELB20 is that discount code?
That's it. Yeah, that's you got it.
Dan, last year I was going to speak to a group, and I had, what I was going to say planned out. And then the journal arrived, and I read the story about Albert Einstein's driver, about the ability to be able to think on your feet. And I scrapped my speech, and I told that story instead.
I don't think you've ever had trouble thinking on your feet. You got it like that. That's one of your strong suits.
Well, thanks, Coach. I appreciate you spending some time with us. We're going to sign off here at class. Any last parting words, Dan?
No, good luck. And I appreciate all you're doing. You keep rolling, and good luck to all of you. You're going to do well. I can tell by your enthusiasm. You're going to do well. And you got a good instructor there. Use him as a resource. Anything I can ever do, you can find me at leadershippublishingteam.com if you ever need anything, or I'll be happy to help.
Dan, thanks so much and good luck. We'll be in touch.
All right, man. Thank you. See you. Thank y'all. Bye-bye. Y'all, did you hear that?
Y'all.
You hear the Mississippi? Thank y'all.
See you, Dan.
See you.